Hey everybody, welcome back to our Steelhead series. Now we're going to talk about the topic that everyone actually wants to talk about. The fly.
Weeds! Hey guys, Josh Trammell here, fishing guide with Mad River Outfitters.
Also, Dustin White, fishing guide with Mad River Outfitters.
We're gonna talk about some of the flies that we use here in Steelhead Alley.
But stay tuned because next week we're going to tell you kind of how we rig these systems for each application so you know exactly what you need to get out there in the water with some success. But Josh, let's first talk flies.
Cool, let's get to it.
Yep, so as we said in our previous videos, we have a few different techniques, a few different tactics for fishing our steelhead tribs, breaking that down into nymphing, breaking that down into stripping streamers and swinging flies. We're going to talk about each of the flies that we think are appropriate within each of those categories. But I do think we should start first with nymphing, Josh. And a lot of this kind of goes down to what we talked about in a previous video, what your CFS is, what your turbidity is in fly selection. It's not as much about matching the hatch per se.
Correct.
It's about visibility with these fish. I always say that you want to be just visible enough for those fish to see it, but without being too brash, too bright, too in your face. So it's just on that edge, beyond that of visibility, that's really going to elicit that eat from the fish.
Yeah. Let's talk about eggs.
Eggs.
Egg pattern first.
Yep. So in 99% of our applications, we're going to have an egg on a rig somewhere. These fish are keyed in on eating eggs, whether that's eggs from other steelhead that are in the tributaries spawning or other species that are in there. They are keyed in on this. And so we got a couple different applications for eggs, going back to what we said before on whether or not we have high flow, dirty water, low flow, clear water. So Josh, let's talk about even the myriad of eggs that we have here. So if we were in a prime condition.
So prime conditions, I would want to use something that is bright, but like you said, not too bright. So this little pink and white yarn egg, something like that. We've got a little bit of orange and white. A lot of us use these kind of two-tone colors here. They stand out a little bit better in some of these varied conditions that we have.
And it also kind of give you, like, for example, with this one, you get the sense that, you know, we have the albumin. So there's actually a realistic presentation of this two-tone. You kind of get that veil that comes over it. It's going to mimic the albumin. And I think that contrast as well really yields success additionally. So that can be bought in the store. We tie them a lot. This is, you know, kind of few different materials that are in it, but again, can be very, very successful for us. Additionally, though, we have beads. Beads.
Different colors, different sizes.
Personally, I fish anything from a 4mm bead up to a 14mm bead. Josh, what are kind of your size range that you tend to fish?
About the same. I would say more often than not, our daily drivers are going to be your 6mm and your 8mm. Bigger and brighter, just like our yarn eggs, or higher, dirtier flow, and smaller and more translucent, more natural colors for those lower and times won't want to have that giant gumball.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, we have a few different ways that we're going to talk about in the future videos on rigging it. That actually is very, very specific, but it's not just eggs that these fish key on. They key in on bait fish patterns as well. Remember, these are steelhead that are migrating in from Lake Erie. And one of the main food forages that they have when they're in the lake are smaller bait fish. They're still keying in on those bait fish when they enter the rivers. And a lot of times their runs are accompanied by runs of smaller bait fish as well. Typically, emerald shiners tend to be the standard fare. And so patterns that are smaller, white, grays, olives, that tends to be very, very productive for us. So we have a few different little patterns here, mainly in that bugger or zonker category. So Josh, let's talk through each of these.
Yeah, so this is one of mine that I typically do. All it is a little bit of white rabbit, a little bit of flash in there, and a little bit of white hen saddle in the front. A lot of times we'll put some dubbing on the front of these. Like I love pink and chartreuse and orange or even olive. You can go crazy with it. Typically what would you say, keeping this in the inch to sometimes 2.5, 3 inch on the bigger size. But when we're drifting under an indicator or bobber, gonna stay in that 1.5 to 1/2 inch.
Generally, yeah. Size 8, size 10s are pretty good. This is another one that I tie. Again, simple like Josh talked about, total guide fly. You got some Arctic Fox for the tail. Love the movement that has. I love the brush that EP has, the woolly critter brush. It's got UV in it. It's got this just kind of thin, wispy legs. I think really pop in a little bit of dirtier condition, and then just some hackle that's palmered up to the top. There,
Of course, always the
standard
tried
bugger.
and true, the classic bead head or not. I would say more often than not, we're not using a whole lot of weight
No,
on our buggers.
Nope. Thin mint as well, in that same vein. Here's another one that I tie with a little bit of bead chain tied on the top. So this actually rides hook point up. And that's if I'm going to run a point fly. This is my point fly, and the terminal fly being the egg or a nymph off the back. So if I think those fish are going to be hanging near the bottom, but still eating those bait fish that are coming down, this is one that's been pretty successful for me as well.
Let's talk about nymphs.
Yeah, so with nymphs, it tends to be, now this is not universally true, but Josh, I tend to be going to more nymph and getting rid of eggs or brighter, bigger, the flashier stuff that we talked about when our water's getting low and clear.
Yep.
They tend to get pattern savvy. That fake alarm tends to sound in those fish when that water's clear enough to perceive that. And so we want to go to more realistic patterns. Our steelhead do eat nymphs. They eat the same aquatic insects and terrestrials that a typical trout would. And so we don't want to shy away from that. So we have a few tried and true patterns that are very effective here. First being,
Tried and true pheasant tail, bead head or not.
yep, always
Works
a
great.
good one. Josh's
Prince
favorite.
nymph.
Yep,
Those are great.
yep,
This is new to the market
yep.
by an interesting fellow,
Yeah, a very interesting fella.
but it catches a couple.
A few fish. This is the Caddyshack. I designed this fly. It's available through MFC, and we sell it here at the shop. Killer fly, especially if you're seeing caddis out. It's not only a good steelhead fly, but good for trout, obviously, as well.
There's a lot of variations of your classics, like your pheasant tails and your prince nymph. What we have gone to a lot, and what Dustin has gone to with his Caddyshack pattern, is these Euro style, these jig hooks. They hold really, really well, and you can get them in a variety of different sizes, and they fish very, very well.
But probably, I think the newest kid in town, the popular kid in town we're seeing success with is the Duracell. Very, very, very simple fly, but same thing. It's on a Perdigon style hook, and it's just, I think this is a standard. If you're in low clear water, this is a must-have
Very easy to tie.
in your box. As we are approaching late winter months, we start seeing winter stones in the water, and so black stonefly patterns work out very, very well. Kind of take your pick of what that is. I mean, you can go big with them, you can go smaller with the Oliver Edwards. Pat's rubber legs works as well. But another kind of surprising thing for even the most seasoned steelhead angler is after we get a precipitory event, specific rain, there's a lot of worms that flush in the water, a lot of annelids. And so don't shy away from your standard San Juan worm. The San Juan worm is remarkably effective. And our steelhead actually do gorge themselves on worms. So that's another one to have after a rain event, to not necessarily low clear water, but that's what we have. Now, as we talked about in a previous episode, Josh, when we're going to the nymph game, we're probably not having a big old indicator on that. The presentation to that fish can be pretty jarring, pretty startling to them. So what do we do to spend those flies on that?
We're gonna go with a hopper dropper, dry dropper. Reason being that we do this, a lot of times those bobbers in that lower clear flow fish are very, very spooky. Bobbers, they splat down on the water very aggressively. These foam bugs or
A stimmy.
Yep. They float very, very softly. They land very, very softly. They're very sensitive as well. So they'll pick up even the slightest little movement of your flies underneath. So when conditions are very, very low and clear, typically in the early fall, maybe late spring, something like that, we'll go with this. We're not really, like we said earlier, we're not really trying to match the hatch with anything up above. Typical colors that we'll use are like a rusty brown. We'll use a purple, black kind of color. A light is a great color as well.
You're really using this as an indicator that you get the bonus eat out of. And that's, I think, just a great surprise, right? It's an added bonus when you get a fish that smacks that hopper, that dry that's on the surface.
Super, super cool.
Yep, very, very, very fun.
Cool.
That kind of takes us through our bugs with what we would be doing with nymphing. Let's transition, Josh, to swing flies.
Yeah.
What's some of the standards that you like to fish with your swing flies?
So Feenstra's, Kevin Feenstra out of Michigan.
Yep.
Great for leech. Awesome, awesome pattern. Very, very easy to tie as well. You can see lots of flash. Our Steelhead, they love bright. Greg Senyo's AI.
I think the AI is, probably that's the gold standard. If the Duracell is the gold standard to have in low and clear water, I think that Senyo's AI is one that should be in every Steelhead English box.
We may, in a little bit lower clear conditions, we may tone it down a little bit on our flash, use a little bit more natural colors. These are not necessarily natural colors.
Nope.
So we might use these in
Dirtier water.
Yep. Right. And then we might use something like this. It's more that kind of creek chub, shiner kind of imitation, and lower in clear conditions. Something with white.
Yep. Again, going back,
emerald shiners.
Yeah, a lot of emerald shiners in there, and so you'll see those shiners on the riverbank, that kind of edge water. That's where you're going to see those shiners at. If you're out on the water, start seeing those. That's where we're going to start thinking about having that on the rig. And as we talked about, if that water's dropping, that's when you're going to want to start employing streamers to strip through the water column. And I think it's a great time to transition to talk about what streamers we tend to fish. Same thing, if we're in lower clear water, we're going to be fishing with a little more subtle, a little more natural colors. We're not going to be going too flashy or trashy with them.
A little smaller on size, typically too.
Yep. I've even had success stripping just buggers. Those same small buggers
the thin mint bugger.
The dead drift, that does well. But a few that I've found that are stripping streamer specific with success on with our steelhead are a lot of Kelly Gallup's patterns. The Peanut Envy in tan is, I think, probably my favorite. This is what I've had a ton of success on. Gray and white works as well. Olive can work well, but I think the tan with our fish.
Straight up white.
Yep, straight up, right, great, yep. The Barely Legal with gray and white. The olive and white works exceptionally well, additionally. And then our changers from our friend Blaine. I'll tie these actually as hybrid changers with a little bit of blue in them. Still go tan, but same thing. White is your best friend with these patterns.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we want to thank you so much for tuning in to this week. We can't wait for next week's episode when we will talk about how to put this all together with your rig. Josh, tell them what they should do from here.
You should hit that thumbs up button, like this video. You should also hit the subscribe button so you can know when the next one's going to come out every Thursday.
And if you have any other questions, please email us or give us a call at the shop. We'd love to talk to you more about steelheading. We love it so much, and we are excited to have you tune in next week. We'll see you then.